I have a great project for you today. It's the Blush Bandana mini pen pouch. And the first thing that we're going to do is take two pieces of batting that are 4.5 inches by 10 inches. And we're basically just going to cut those two pieces and then add some inside the bag fabric. And then I've bought a bandana and also another fat quarter I bought from Michael's as well. But I wanted to make like the bandana more of the focal point of this bag. So I'm going to take some other scraps and basically I'm just going to be adding them and using that piece of batting for like a foundation. So this is something called foundation piecing. And at the same time, since we have our inside the bag fabric, we're doing our quilting at the same time. So I'm just picking pieces that are taller than that foundation piece, which is our batting. And then I'm doing like a 1/4 inch seam when the scrap pieces are right sides together. And if I have like a nice straight line, I'm going to use that for my seam. And then any other part of the scraps that are hanging out, I'm just going to ignore that. And then I'm just almost like finger pressing them in place, but you could take them to the iron and iron them as well. So I've already done my first rectangle. And this is the second one, so I just wanted to show you like how I was doing this. So you can see you can almost like finger press that down if it works out. And then I'm just taking large pieces of scraps. If your scrap isn't tall enough, then you can just add a few together and then add it as a strip to this foundation piece. But whatever you do want it to be taller than the foundation piece. So now I'm just sewing on this last scrap, which is basically my bandana. I've just like cut little scrap pieces out of it. And then once I'm done with this, I'm just going to add a couple extra quilting lines. I'm lining up the edge of the foot with the seam that I sewed. And that way it gives us like a nice straight quilting line on both sides of that seam. So that gives us plenty of quilting. We don't need to do anything else on this piece. And then once we're done sewing this, you want to trim both rectangles down to 3.5 by 9 inches. And that way, since we're making it larger and then we're trimming it down, then our piece will be really nice and square and straight. So that works out really well for putting the bag together. So my sides don't match each other, but they are all the same fabrics, so that works out really well. So now I'm going to take the top of one of our panels and I'm going to flip that to the inside fabric and add a 2-inch strip. So these are 2 by 11 inches. And basically I took my bandana and I just cut a 2-inch strip so that it was about a 1/2 inch away from like one of the designs. And that way I can, like when it folds around, you'll be seeing that design on the fold. And then I'm going to cut my other strip the same exact way so that they'll match each other, because these first 2 strips will be sitting next to the zipper and they will show on the outside of the bag as well. The third 2-inch strip will be at the bottom of the inside of the bag. So everything that you need, all the pieces, will be in the description for this project. So now I'm just sewing on that folded edge. And basically what this is a binding strip. So this is how we would bind like a big bed quilt as well. But this is also used in like finishing off raw edges. So that's what we're doing here. And we're just going to do this one strip on our panel. But as I said before, we'll do the same thing on the next piece, on the next rectangle. But you do want to just be aware, like if your fabric is directional, that this is placed at the top of your piece. So now I'm just trimming those strips exactly like flush with the sides. That's why we do it a little bit bigger. But if you're using scraps, like whatever covers that rectangle is fine. So now we have those 2 binding edges done. And now we're ready to do a little bit to our zipper, and then we're going to add those panels to our zipper. So here what we're going to do is take 2 of the 3.5-inch squares, and we're going to have the square face up, and we're going to have the zipper face down. And then we're just going to wrap this around our zipper, but we do want to place it about 1/4 inch away, actually a little bit more than 1/4 inch away than the side of our square. And that way when we take our 1/4 inch seam, then we'll be right in the right position with our zipper. So if you will be sewing over any part of your zipper, you do want to just hand crank your machine so that you don't want to like be hitting like a metal piece or anything. So now we're going to pull that square out. I'm going to trim that edge, but then we're going to pull that square out, and that will give us like a nice fabric extension on our zipper. And then we'll do the same thing to the other side as well. But like on mine, I have a big zipper pull, so I'm going to have to pull that back in order to add the square. But it's the same process. So now we're going to take this like zipper piece that we have, and we're going to match it up with our first panel. So it doesn't matter which one you pick, but you do need to have the binding strips sitting next to the zipper. And you do want to be seeing the outside of your bag. And we're just going to center that zipper on our panel. And you can pin this if you want to make sure it stays in place, because it is important that it is centered. And then I'm just pulling that zipper pull back out of the way. And then once we get up to that with sewing, we're going to have to stop. Like I usually try to stop with the needle down and then put my foot up and then kind of get that zipper pull back where it belongs. And we do want to sew the whole way down that panel. And then we're just going to take the second panel and we're just going to match it up with the first panel. And we're going to sew like the exact same way down the other side. So we're just top stitching this panel to our zipper. So when I'm sewing down here and I need to stop and get that zipper pull out of the way, I try to keep the needle down, and then I also pivot it to the side, and that tends to help me get that zipper pull where it needs to be. So now we're just finishing up this panel, and then I usually like to try the zipper a couple times and just make sure everything's working right. And then at this point you just want to leave that zipper open, and then we're turning it towards the inside of the bag. And then we're going to add that third 2-inch strip. So you're going to see this on the inside of the bottom of the bag. So we just want to put like right sides together here and sew 1/4 inch. And then we'll bring that around to the other side and finish it off. So right now, since we're closing the bag, we're like sewing it shut. That's why we want to make sure our zipper's open so that we can get this bag right side out easily. And now I'm just bringing that strip around, and I'm going to sew on that folded edge. So we fold it in once, then we fold it in again, and we're going to sew on that folded edge, which is just right past that first seam that we did. And that's how you do all binding strips, pretty much. And then we're just going to trim that flush with the sides. But that's why I like to give a little bit of extra on the strip, just so that you can trim it down like nice and straight. So now we just reposition the bag, and we just put our zipper centered on that seam that we just sewed. And then I'm going to clip this here. I'm going to clip both sides, and then I'm just going to take that 1/4 inch seam on the side, and then we can kind of flip those, we can clip those like ears off. And I just make sure that our sides are pulled out all the way so you don't get a tuck in that side. And then now I'm going to measure out a 3/4 of an inch square on each corner. And then I'm going to cut that out on all 4 corners. And I do try to be careful here because the more accurate it is, the more our bag sits nice and square. So here we're just going to pop this out, and then we're going to line those 2 edges up, and then we're going to do another 1/4 inch seam. And we'll do that on all 4 corners. And this will give us that great box shape. So it takes it from being a flat pouch and it makes it into a box shape. And it only takes a minute since these seams are so small. So now we're just going to do 2 squares to cover up those 2 edges, the sides of our bag that have the raw seams. So I'm just going to take the first square and I'm going to fold in a 1/2 inch on the top and the bottom, and then take a 1/4 inch seam, just so that it's a nice finished off square. But if you have directional fabric, you do want that to be on the top and the bottom. And then now I'm taking one of those raw edges and we're putting it right sides together, but I'm just going to re-sew one of those box seams with now this square. And you just want the square centered on this. And it is helpful to have, like, let's say the top of the square not coming up too far. So now I'm just gonna take another seam here and just kind of encapsulate that first box corner. And now we're just going to fold the other side. And then again, we're gonna encapsulate that second box corner. And then I'm just going to take that another 1/4 inch seam. So we've already sewed a seam there, and we're basically just re-sewing it. We're just adding this square onto here. But this way we have like a nice finished edge on both sides. And the bag is still inside out, but when we put it right sides out, I took a couple stitches at the top of that square. So I did them by machine and made sure my thread matched, but you could do that by machine or by hand, or just not do it at all. So that's up to you. So now our bag is right sides out, and I've added some key rings and some dangles. And this bag is about 7 inches long and 2.5 inches tall and about 2 inches wide. And it fits about 14 pens. And then I also can fit like spray in here as well. So it still holds quite a bit, even though it's like a smaller bag. But I love this size bag because I can put things in it and put it in my purse. Like, let's say I have lipsticks in it or whatever, and I can throw this in my purse, and then I can be like changing purses or changing bags easily. So I do really love these little bags for organizing. I think it's really nice. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this project, and I would love to have you subscribe or like or comment. That really helps my channel, so I appreciate that. And I hope that you're having a wonderful day. So thank you.